In a dimly lit room, cryptic formulas cover the walls, the mechanical hum of an Enigma machine fills the air, and tension crackles with every clattering key press. As war looms, a young Polish mathematician stares at the incomprehensible strings of ciphers, but beyond the cold numbers and flashing lights lies a secret war of shadows and codes, a battle fought by minds, not bullets. In the midst of World War II, Marian Rejewski and his team are running out of time. From covert meetings in the woods to daring escapes across occupied France, their pursuit of the ultimate cryptographic key holds the fate of nations in its grasp. As the machine whirs on, the question remains: can they unlock the ever-changing secrets of the Enigma before it's too late? What if I told you that the man who first cracked the Nazi Enigma wasn't British, but a young Polish genius? And even after solving the machine, his battle was far from over. He was plunged into a shadowy world of espionage, cryptic codes, and a life-or-death race against time. How did Marian Rejewski keep outsmarting the enemy in a game where every move could cost him everything? And why don't we hear his name as much as we do Turing's? What happened to him? And how did he and his team manage to unravel the mystery of Enigma without even laying hands on the machine at first? This is the story of the Polish cryptologists who didn't just break the code, they rewrote the rules of war. But how did they do it, and at what cost? As the shadows closed in, the real question became, could they survive long enough to finish the job? Part 1, The First Break, Cracking the Enigma Code, the Early Life of Marian Rejewski. Marian Adam. Rejewski was born on August 16, 1905, in Bromberg, a town situated in the Prussian province of Posen, which today is known as Bydgoszcz in modern Poland. His birthplace, a region deeply affected by political turbulence, had been subject to shifting control due to the partitions of Poland by neighboring powers, leaving a legacy of foreign dominance. This environment was one of national struggle and perseverance, a backdrop that would inevitably shape the patriotism and resilience Rejewski displayed later in his life. Growing up during a time when Poland was working to regain its sovereignty, the sense of national identity was strong in communities like his. For Rejewski, this personal connection to Poland's fight for independence may have deeply influenced his motivations and sense of duty. Rejewski's intellectual capabilities, especially his talent for mathematics, became evident early in his life. As a child, he demonstrated a natural aptitude for problem-solving and abstract thinking, traits that would serve him well in the years to come. His exceptional mathematical skills earned him a place at the Mathematics Institute of Poznan University. The university was a prestigious institution and one of the few in Poland offering advanced studies in mathematics, a discipline that was gaining importance in a world increasingly influenced by technology and communication advances. During his time at Poznan University, Rejewski thrived in a challenging academic environment. While most of his peers focused on more traditional branches of mathematics, Rejewski found himself intrigued by more practical applications of the subject, particularly in the emerging field of cryptography. Poznań, although primarily known for its academic rigor, was also becoming a center for clandestine work in code-breaking, with whispers of secret projects aimed at securing Poland's intelligence capabilities. This intellectual atmosphere fostered innovation, and Rejewski's exceptional mathematical prowess did not go unnoticed. In 1929, while still a student, Rejewski was handpicked for a secret cryptology course organized by the Cipher Bureau of the Polish General Staff. This was not just any ordinary class. It was an elite program designed to train Poland's best mathematical minds in the art of deciphering military codes, particularly those of Germany, a nation whose military strength and encrypted communications posed a serious threat to Poland's security. This covert training was a response to the growing geopolitical dangers, as Nazi Germany was on the rise, and its military communications were becoming increasingly complex. The course was notoriously difficult, requiring participants to master advanced cryptographic techniques. However, Rejewski excelled, outshining many of his peers. His success was largely attributed to his ability to combine theoretical knowledge with practical application, a skill he honed while still balancing his university studies. Much of the training was based on a French cryptographic manual written by Colonel Marcel Giviège, which laid the foundational principles of modern cryptology. Rejewski's early exposure to these ideas, alongside his natural mathematical brilliance, equipped him with the tools that would prove critical in his later work on the Enigma code. The road to Enigma, Rejewski and two associates, Jerzy Różycki and Henryk Zygalski, were formally hired by the Cipher Bureau in 1932 to work on German message decoding. But this was not any ordinary cryptographic riddle. The Polish Cipher Bureau was focused on Enigma, a machine so advanced the Germans felt to be unbreakable. Using a rotational system of rotors and plugboards that scrambled letters into an astronomical number of possible configurations, the Enigma machine encrypted messages. For the typical person, the Enigma was a fortress of secrecy, a cipher with daily changing possibilities of over 158 quintillion settings. Rejewski, though, was not like most people. Already among the best cryptanalyzers in Europe, the challenge of the Enigma machine was about to define his life's work. Rejewski and associates first worked on an earlier Enigma machine version without a plugboard, but the challenge of cracking the code grew much more difficult when the Germans upgraded to the more sophisticated Enigma 1. Rejewski was assigned to solve the riddle of Enigma, working alone for 2 hours every day. He invented the use of mathematical theories in cryptography during this time, especially permutation theory, which had never been used for codebreaking on this scope prior. Rejewski brought pure mathematics into the fray, making a historic discovery that would alter the path of the war. Unlike earlier cryptanalyzers who depended on linguistic patterns or letter frequency, breaking the code, a mathematical genius at work. The issue was complicated in several directions. Rejewski had to know the internal wiring of the rotors, the daily key settings, and how the plugboard swapped letters if he was to break Enigma. He had intercepted German messages and intelligence from the French, but one piece vanished, precisely how the rotors were wired. Rejewski found the internal wiring of the rotors using sophisticated mathematical methods, more especially group theory. He concentrated on the link between the first and fourth letters of the encrypted messages. Due to the Germans' use of what was known as the indicator system, Rejewski was able to build cycles of letter relationships by examining repeated messages sent with the same settings, which finally revealed the wiring pattern of the Enigma's rotors. In the field of cryptography, this was an amazing accomplishment that some historians contend single-handedly laid the foundation for all later Allied code-breaking operations during the war. Still, more study had to be done. The plugboard of the Enigma machine added yet another level of complexity, further rearranging the letters. But Rejewski and his colleagues acquired papers from Hans Thilo Schmidt, a spy inside the German cryptographic service, thanks in part to French military intelligence. These records, supplied by French intelligence chief Gustave Bertrand, covered some of the operational settings for the Enigma machine over a 2-month period in 1932. Rejewski was able to rebuild the internal machine workings and cut the number of variables in his equations using this intelligence. Rejewski cracked the Enigma by the end of 1932. With an accuracy the Germans themselves never would have dreamed possible, he and his colleagues could now decode German communications. The drawback was that Rejewski had cracked the Enigma while the Germans kept changing their encryption techniques. The Cipher Bureau came to see as the war loomed that they could not rely just on Rejewski's mathematical genius. They wanted a means of mechanizing the daily Enigma machine settings breaking process. The bomb and the card catalog Rejewski developed 2 innovative tools in response to these fresh difficulties: the bomba, or sometimes known as the cryptologic bomb, and the cryptologic card catalog, to greatly speed up the decryption process. The card catalog system listed every conceivable Enigma rotor setting, together with matching encrypted letter combinations. The bomba, an early form of what might be regarded as a proto-computer, an electromechanical device meant to break Enigma codes automatically, was in progress. Both innovations let Rejewski and his colleagues keep one step ahead of the Germans. But the stakes were rising ever higher, as Nazi Germany kept raising the complexity of its encryption. Rejewski and his associates presented their revolutionary findings to British and French cryptologists in Warsaw 5 weeks before World War II broke out. Although the British, especially those at Bletchley Park, had not made any progress on Enigma at the time, they could start their own decryption effort using Rejewski's team's data. Ultra, the code-breaking effort that would finally prove decisive in the Allies' triumph over Nazi Germany, originated in the cooperation of Polish, British, and French cryptologists. Part 2. Chasing the Daily Cipher, the War Against Time. After Marian Rejewski cracked the Enigma machine's wiring, the battle against the ever-evolving German encryption techniques had only just begun. It was the year 1933, and while Rejewski had succeeded in reverse engineering the Enigma machine, effectively understanding its internal mechanics, this breakthrough alone wasn't enough to decode the encrypted German messages. The Poles had the machine, but they still lacked the daily encryption keys used by the Germans to encode their communications. Rejewski later reflected on this significant challenge. We had the machine, but we didn't have the keys. We had to work out methods to find the daily keys. In essence, while they now had a comprehensive understanding of how the machine worked, they still needed to figure out how to decrypt the constantly changing daily codes, each of which was unique and determined by the Germans' encryption procedures for any given day. This marked the beginning of an intense cat-and-mouse game, where every Polish success in decoding German communications would soon be countered by an increase in the complexity of German cryptographic methods. The early methods, tackling Enigma's plugboard. The first major hurdle to overcome in the quest to break Enigma's daily keys was deciphering how the Germans used the machine's plugboard to create additional layers of encryption. The Enigma machine itself was already a complex device, but the plugboard made it exponentially more challenging to crack. By connecting different pairs of letters, the plugboard allowed the Germans to create millions of possible configurations, further complicating the already intricate cipher. However, Rejewski and his team quickly realized that not all the letters were affected by the plugboard. Specifically, only 6 pairs of letters were swapped, leaving the remaining 14 letters unchanged. This discovery led to the development of the grill method, one of the earliest successful techniques for partially deciphering the Enigma codes. The grill method capitalized on the fact that a portion of the letters remained in their original positions despite the encryption process. By focusing on these unaltered letters, Rejewski's team could narrow down the possibilities for what the original message might have been, making the decryption process faster and more efficient. This was a crucial breakthrough in the early stages of their work, providing a glimmer of hope that the seemingly impenetrable Enigma cipher could indeed be broken. Soon after, Rejewski's colleague Marian Rejewski developed another significant method, the clock technique. This approach allowed cryptographers to determine the position of the Enigma machine's rightmost rotor, one of the key components in setting the daily encryption key. The Enigma machine used a series of rotating wheels, or rotors, to scramble the input letters, and knowing the starting configuration of these rotors was essential for decoding messages. The clock technique proved especially useful in figuring out the starting positions of the rotors at the beginning of a given day, greatly enhancing the team's ability to break the Enigma codes. Despite these early successes, the Germans were quick to adapt. By October 1936, they had altered their encryption procedures, varying the plugboard connections in a way that significantly reduced the effectiveness of the grill method. As the Germans continuously evolved their cryptographic strategies, it became clear that Rejewski and his team would need to innovate constantly to keep up. The cyclometer, breaking codes at scale. In response to these new challenges, Rejewski created a revolutionary mechanical device known as the cyclometer. The cyclometer was designed to analyze the permutations generated by the Enigma machine's rotors, allowing the cryptographers to map out all possible configurations. Though the work required to build this tool was laborious, the results were transformative. Once the cyclometer was completed, it provided the team with a complete catalog of possible Enigma settings, an astounding 456 different configurations. This massive repository of data allowed Rejewski and his colleagues to quickly decode the daily keys used by the Germans. With the cyclometer in hand, the process of decrypting messages became far more efficient. Instead of spending hours or even days attempting to figure out the daily key, the team could now accomplish this task in as little as 12 to 20 minutes. The cyclometer represented a major leap forward in code-breaking technology, allowing the Poles to read intercepted German communications with unprecedented speed and accuracy. However, this victory was short-lived. In late 1937, the Germans made yet another adjustment to their Enigma machines, replacing the reflector that was used as part of the encryption process. This change rendered the existing cyclometer configurations obsolete, forcing Rejewski's team to recalculate their entire catalog from scratch. Despite the enormous difficulty of this task, the cryptographers completed it by January 1938, allowing them to resume reading up to 75% of the intercepted Enigma messages. Rejewski later remarked that if they had been provided with more resources, they could have potentially deciphered up to 90% of the messages, underscoring the brilliance of their methods even in the face of limited financial and material support. Bomba and Segalski sheets, next-level innovation. In September 1938, the Germans once again introduced a more sophisticated method of encoding their keys, temporarily thwarting the Poles' progress. But Rejewski and his team were undeterred. In response to this new obstacle, they designed a new device known as the bomba. The bomba was a highly specialized tool capable of solving the Enigma's daily keys in roughly 2 hours, a significant improvement over previous methods. The Cipher Bureau quickly constructed 6 of these devices, and by November of that year, they were operational, allowing the cryptographers to resume breaking German codes. The bomba relied on a crucial assumption that the plugboard did not scramble all of the letters. As long as a portion of the letters remained unchanged, the bomba could use this information to reverse engineer the daily key. However, this approach was once again rendered ineffective when, on January 3, 1939, the Germans increased the number of plugboard connections, further complicating the encryption process. Around the same time, Henryk Zygalski, another member of Rejewski's team, developed an innovative solution of his own, the Zygalski sheets. These were a series of perforated paper grids, with one sheet corresponding to each of the 26 possible left rotor positions in the Enigma machine. When the sheets were stacked and aligned correctly, they could reveal the daily rotor settings, providing yet another method for breaking the Enigma code. The beauty of the Zygalski sheets lay in their independence from the plugboard configuration. Unlike the bomba, which relied on the assumption that some letters were not scrambled, the Zygalski sheets could be used regardless of how many plugboard connections were in play. This made them an invaluable tool as the Germans continued to increase the complexity of their encryption methods. Unfortunately, this triumph was also short-lived. In December 1938, the Germans introduced 2 additional rotors to the Enigma machine, exponentially increasing the complexity of the cipher. With the addition of these new rotors, the number of possible configurations grew tenfold, making it far more difficult to crack the daily keys. Rejewski estimated that they would need 60 bombas to handle the increased complexity, a number far beyond the Cipher Bureau's financial means. Additionally, creating a full set of Zygalski sheets would take an enormous amount of time, making it impossible to keep up with the Germans' pace of innovation. A gift to the Allies, sharing the secrets of Enigma. As the threat of war loomed larger and the limitations of the Polish cryptographic efforts became more apparent, the Polish government made a crucial decision. In July 1939, just weeks before the outbreak of World War II, the Poles invited their French and British allies to a secret conference held in the Kabaty Woods, just south of Warsaw. At this clandestine meeting, Rejewski, Zygalski, and Rojitsky laid bare the entirety of their cryptographic achievements. They presented everything they had discovered about the Enigma machine over the past several years, including the designs for the bomba and the Zygalski sheets. This transfer of knowledge proved to be a turning point in the Allies' ability to decipher German communications. Without the groundwork laid by Rejewski and his team, the British efforts at Bletchley Park would have been delayed by years, severely hampering the Allied war effort. The importance of this Polish contribution cannot be overstated. As historian Sir Harry Hinsley, who worked at Bletchley Park, later noted, without the initial Polish breakthroughs, the war could have dragged on for at least 2 additional years. The Poles' decision to share their secrets with the Allies in the summer of 1939 would prove instrumental in the eventual success of the Allied code-breaking efforts. P.C. Bruno, carrying on the fight in France. When war finally broke out in September 1939, the Polish Cipher Bureau was evacuated, first to Romania and then to France. In France, the cryptologists resumed their work at a facility known as P.C. Bruno, located northeast of Paris. There, they continued to collaborate with their French and British counterparts, working tirelessly to break the Enigma ciphers. Despite the chaos of war, the Poles remained remarkably effective in their efforts. They maintained contact with their British allies at Bletchley Park, even using Enigma encrypted messages to correspond. These messages often ended with the ironic sign-off, Heil Hitler, a testament to the Poles' resilience and determination in the face of adversity. In early 1940, Alan Turing, one of the leading figures in British cryptography, personally visited P.C. Bruno to meet with Rejewski, Rojitsky, and Zygalski. This meeting further strengthened the collaboration between the Polish and British cryptographic teams, ensuring that their combined efforts would continue to yield valuable intelligence throughout the war. Part 3. Secrets in the Shadows. Rejewski's escape and legacy. France and Britain. The rise of P.C. Bruno Rejewski and his group barely avoided Warsaw in September 1939 as Poland fell under Nazi attack. They were smuggled into Romania and escaped capture by the closest of margins while the war loomed over Europe. From there, a complex path brought them to Paris, where they resumed their vital work at P.C. Bruno, a joint French, Polish, and Spanish radio intelligence unit buried in a chateau 40 kilometers outside of Paris. Here in the peace of the countryside, the most intense labor was underway. A few months after opening the business, the cryptologists cracked their first Enigma key in France on January 17, 1940. Rejewski's team couldn't afford to miss a beat, as the German war machine displayed no slowing down tendencies. Between PC Bruno and Bletchley Park, England's cryptography headquarters, communication became second nature. Paradoxically, they encrypted their own messages using the very Enigma machine they were trying to crack. The sarcastic Heil Hitler that marked the secret war they were fighting closest the messages. The involvement of Alan Turing. The brilliance of Alan Turing also played a role here. Based on Rejewski's earlier bomba kryptologiczna, Turing visited PC Bruno early in 1940, working with the Polish team as he developed the British bomb. The efficiency of the bomb was much enhanced by the intellectual interchange between Turing and the Polish cryptologists. PC Bruno was in continual danger, but the mathematicians kept producing ideas that helped to define the direction of the war. Rejewski and his group had another escape as the Battle of France developed in June 1940. Far from the turmoil in Europe, Bertrand, their French agent, set up their evacuation to Algeria. Still, this was only a little vacation. Cadix, the final stand in Vichy, France. Rejewski and his colleagues returned to Vichy, France in September 1940 and established a clandestine radio intelligence station close to Uzès at the Château des Fuzes. Under codenamed Cadix, this operation, if not more dangerous than Bruno, was just as their efforts on German ciphers persisted. But they also cracked the Swiss Enigma machine, which lacked a plug board and was deemed less secure. Rejewski and Henryk Zygalski were assigned to examine messages encrypted using the Lackada cipher machine, a Polish rotor-based system, for safe correspondence between Cadix and the Polish General Staff in London by the middle of 1941. The shock drove them to break the cipher in hours, revealing a flaw in a gadget meant to guard their own. But the war was encircling them. Arriving at the Château des Fuzes, a German radio detection truck showed on November 6, 1942. It was a sobering reminder that their time in France was running short, even though it did not directly challenge the cryptologists. Just after the Allied Operation Torch landings in North Africa, French intelligence ordered a quick evacuation on November 9th. 3 days later, the Germans were occupying the chateau, a harrowing escape to Spain. Rejewski and Zygalski were sent to Nice in small groups, but soon they had to flee once more as suspicions developed. Always one step ahead of capture, their path wound across southern France, via towns including Marseille, Toulouse, and Perpignan. With the aid of a local guide, they started a dangerous journey across the Pyrenees Mountains towards Spain on 29th of January 1943. Their guide turned on them close to the border, robbing them at gunpoint and leaving them behind. Against all the odds, they entered Spain, only to be taken under custody by Spanish police hours later. It was a terrible blow after all they had gone through. But once more fate stepped in, the Polish Red Cross helped them to be released following 3 months in Spanish prisons. At last, Rejewski and Zygalski arrived in Portugal by July 1943 and were flown to Britain on HMS Scottish, arriving at RAF Hendon on August 3rd, inducted into the Polish Armed Forces. The two mathematicians started working on German SS and SD hand ciphers. Working on simpler systems after Enigma, Rejewski and Zygalski continued their priceless contributions to the Allied war effort, even though it felt like a demotion. Britain, the forgotten heroes. Rejewski and Zygalski were excluded from Enigma decryption, which American and British cryptologists now handled in Britain, rather, often depending on the Doppelkassettenverfahren, double playfair. They were assigned to work on lesser ciphers, specifically German SS and SD hand ciphers. Since both cryptologists had already worked on this system in France, being assigned these chores seemed like a downgrade. Alan Stripp, a British cryptologist, famously remarked that setting Rejewski and Zygalski to work on the Doppelkassetten system was like using racehorses to pull wagons. Though the Poles broke the code, few even knew of their involvement despite their contributions to the early Enigma discoveries, since Bletchley Park was strictly under secret control. Rejewski and Zygalski had been cut off from the Enigma efforts by the time they were enlisted into the Polish Armed Forces as privates in August 1943, and later promoted to lieutenants. These pioneers were left apart from both their work and its appreciation as the British and Americans seized complete control. Post-war Poland. A hero in hiding, Rejewski returned to Poland very different from the one he had left following his discharge from the Polish army in 1946. Poland was now under Soviet control. His family had been uprooted. Although he was offered a university post, he turned it down because of his health and would rather work in a more lowly capacity as director of a cable manufacturing company. After the war, life was not simple. Suspected of West-based corporation, Rejewski was routinely questioned by the Polish Office of Public Security. Rejewski never again worked in cryptography. His son sadly contracted polio. But in the late 1960s, Winston Churchill's rigorous orders to keep ultra the Allied code-breaking effort, secretly started to reveal the whole extent of his successes. Rejewski wrote papers and memoirs outlining his work, enabling historians to better grasp the extent to which Poland had helped to bring Nazi Germany down. Outro Marian Rejewski passed away in 1980, but his legacy lives on. He helped turn the tide of World War II, yet his contributions were overshadowed for decades. As we reflect on his remarkable journey, from cracking Enigma in Poland to narrowly escaping capture in France, his story serves as a reminder of the unsung heroes who work in the shadows, fighting wars not with weapons, but with their intellect. If you're as fascinated by Rejewski's story as we are, be sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more untold stories from the world's most gripping mysteries.